They were just two girls, excited for a simple trip, nothing out of the ordinary. But the moment they stepped up to the boarding gate, everything changed. Stares turned into whispers, and whispers into a decision that would strip them of their dignity in front of everyone. Not because of a mistake, not because of a rule, but because of something they could never change about themselves. What happened next didn't just delay a flight, it exposed a cruel truth hiding in plain sight. And the way the story ended, no one at that airport could ever forget. For Maya and Lila, life had always been about balance. Balance between homework and laughter, between soccer practice and late-night talks about the future. They were twins, inseparable not just by blood but by the quiet rhythm of growing up side by side. Their father was a name whispered in boardrooms, a powerful CEO who commanded respect. But to them, he was just Dad, the man who tucked them in with silly jokes and reminded them to chase their dreams fearlessly. On that morning, the airport was buzzing like it always does. Families rushing, announcements echoing, wheels dragging across tile. For the girls, it wasn't anything unusual. Just another flight, another adventure. They clutched their boarding passes with the kind of excitement only teenagers know, already planning the snacks they'd grab once they were on the plane. But beneath the surface, something else lingered. A kind of tension they didn't yet feel, but would soon be forced to confront. Because sometimes the world doesn't see children the way their families do. Sometimes strangers choose judgment over humanity. And for Maya and Lila, what should have been a simple trip was about to twist into a moment that would expose just how fragile normal really is. At first, everything seemed ordinary. The twins handed over their tickets, their excitement bubbling as the gate attendant scanned each one. But then, pause, a glance, a furrowed brow, the kind of silence that feels heavier than words. The attendant looked at them, then back at the screen. Her lips pressed into a line. "I'm sorry," she said, finally, voice cold and clipped. "You can't board." Confused, Maya laughed nervously, thinking maybe it was just a mistake. Lila tightened her grip on the strap of her bag. She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, "Why not?" The explanation never came. Instead, the attendant waved the next passengers forward as if the girls weren't even there. People stared, some curious, some whispering. A man muttered under his breath, shaking his head as though he already understood what this was really about. Minutes passed, each second stretched into humiliation. The twins pleaded, showing their tickets again, pointing to the confirmation email glowing on their phones. But the response was the same. Step aside. No reason, no clarity, just dismissal. And that's when the feeling sank in. This wasn't a glitch. This wasn't a mix-up. This was something far uglier. A security officer arrived, his stance rigid, his hand resting too comfortably on the edge of his belt. "What's the problem here?" he asked, but his eyes never sought an answer. They judged. They assumed. Passengers walked past, their carry-ons rolling loudly against the floor, pretending not to notice, or maybe not caring to notice. For the twins, every second felt like a spotlight, not on who they were, but on what they looked like. Lila felt her cheeks burn, fighting back tears. Maya's fists clenched, anger boiling where fear tried to root. They had done nothing wrong, nothing at all. Yet here they were, standing on the sidelines of their own lives, treated as less than human. The officer leaned closer. "If you don't calm down," he said, his tone sharp, "you'll be removed from the airport." Calm down? For simply existing? For daring to want the same freedom everyone else was granted without question? The girls exchanged a look, silent but powerful. They knew this moment wasn't just about missing a flight. It was about being erased, dismissed, and silenced. But then, Lila's phone buzzed. A text. 2 words from their father. "Everything okay?" Her hands shook as she typed back, her message spilling out in frantic bursts. She hesitated before hitting send, unsure if involving him would help or only make things worse. But what choice did they have? The gate doors were closing, their dignity already torn apart. And in that split second, the decision to reach out would change everything, not just for them, but for every soul waiting to take off that day. The officer's presence loomed larger by the second, his voice sharp, each word echoing like a threat. "Step aside now," he barked. Maya and Lila froze, their boarding passes still trembling in their hands. Around them, whispers grew louder, the crowd sensing something more than a delay. But no one stepped in, not a single person. Then, Lila's phone lit up again. This time, a call. "Dad!" Her thumb hovered for a moment, then pressed accept. The officer leaned in. "Phones away, now!" But the voice on the other end was calm, steady, and carried a weight the officer couldn't have guessed. "What's happening?" "Put me on speaker." The girls obeyed, their father's voice filling the gate area. "This is Daniel Carter, CEO of Atlas Air." The officer flinched. The attendants shifted uneasily. A few passengers gasped. Suddenly, the silence wasn't just humiliation, it was power shifting hands. "Why," Carter thundered through the speaker, "are my daughters being denied their legal right to board this flight? I want an answer now." The attendant stammered, her eyes darting between the officer and the frozen line of passengers. "Sir, it's a mistake, just a mix-up." But it was too late. The truth had already been laid bare. Phones were up now, recording. The same crowd that once turned away was suddenly alive with murmurs, some filming every second of the exchange. "Listen carefully," Carter said, his tone like steel. "If you do not allow my daughters to board this flight immediately, every aircraft under this airline will remain grounded by tomorrow morning. I will make certain of it." The officer stepped back. The attendant's face went pale. The entire gate seemed to hold its breath. Maya and Lila stood taller now, still shaking, but no longer silent. The same voices that had tried to dismiss them were powerless under the weight of truth. And in that moment, as the gate boarding lights blinked red, then green, the world watching through dozens of recording phones, it was no longer just about 2 girls. It was about every injustice that had gone unchallenged. Because this time, someone had finally said enough. The gate finally opened for Maya and Lila, but the damage was already done. They walked down that narrow jet bridge, boarding passes clutched tightly, hearts pounding, not with excitement anymore, but with the weight of humiliation. Passengers stared as they took their seats, some with shame in their eyes, others with the blankness of those who prefer silence over confrontation. Yes, their father's power had forced the airline to act. Yes, they were finally on the plane. But victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like survival. Because the truth is clear, without his voice, without his name, their story might have ended very differently. And that's the part that lingers. 2 teenagers had to lean on extraordinary privilege just to claim a basic right, to sit, to travel, to be treated as human. What happens to the millions of others who don't have a CEO on speed dial, who don't have the world watching when they're told, step aside? This wasn't just about one flight. It was about every school hallway, every traffic stop, every checkout line where judgment replaces fairness, and dignity is stripped away in silence. For Maya and Lila, the lesson was bitter but unforgettable. The world won't always see them for who they are, but they can never let that define their worth. And for the rest of us, the question remains: how many more daughters, sons, brothers, and sisters will be forced to carry scars from battles they never chose? How many more voices have to cry out before change takes root? Because at the end of the day, this isn't just their story, it's ours. The story of a society that has a choice: to look away or to finally say, enough.